So the first story or report that came from this area came from site number 1, which is this site right over here. I have permission to film in this campsite since I know the people camping here. They are off in town getting some more supplies, so I will be filming right through here. So at this campsite, back in 1998 or 99, I can't remember the exact date, I got my very first report. This is long before I was even into Bigfooting. My brother was camping here with his son, my nephew, and my brother is a major in the United States Army right now. He's an Army chaplain, and they were camping here one night. They came out to do a father-son camp out, and they set up camp, and they had the whole place to themselves. Nobody else was out here camping, and this was during early fall, so September-ish, somewhere around there. So they were set up here camping. They had a fire going, and something in the middle of the night, as my brother described, he heard something walk in from the tree line across the road here. And he said it sounded like something walking on 2 legs, walked in through the brush over here, and he said he heard it walk in and then sit down, and he became extremely uncomfortable, and he just knew this thing was just sitting there, and he could hear it breathing. Within a few minutes, the entire camp just reeked of this nasty odor he described, and this went on for about probably 20 minutes, until the point where he just felt extremely uncomfortable. My nephew was only about 4 or 5 at the time, so he actually ended up grabbing his son, putting him in the Jeep, grabbing all the gear, and they got the hell out of here. And that was one of my first reports here at Little Twin Lakes. Okay, we're at site 6, and it's a very spacious campsite. And this is where I had a personal experience with my buddy. We had this, we were camping here I think it was about 4 years ago, last time we camped here. And it was late September, almost October. We were having kind of an Indian summer, so we decided to come out for a couple days and do some camping. And this is where we were set up when the action started happening. So, let me get down to the table there and I'll tell you all about it. So like I said, we were here late September, early October, camping about 4 years ago at this exact location when we heard a lot of vocalizations, wood knocks. Brought my buddy here along with me. He was camping with me here. And we're going to tell you our story of what happened here at this spot in Site 6. So, all right.
All right, go ahead.
So, in the beginning of the night, our first night here, we were cutting firewood. I was cutting firewood, and the sounds of the firewood, chopping the firewood, kind of echoed across the lake, which ended up getting us a wood knock from the other side of the lake. The wood knocks continued for a couple hours, and then kind of went quiet after that. And then around 10 o'clock, we started hearing some vocalizations, which we thought were coyotes. But everything started getting a little closer to us, a little closer. The wood knocks, and then the vocalizations started around, I think, 11:30 midnight, and they were intense. What you think?
Yeah, if I don't know anybody out there knows anything about a wood knock. So a wood knock is just this loud thumping wood noise that communication between Bigfoots, right? Something like that. You smack a tree and possibly, people trying to figure this stuff out, that they're striking it and they're letting other Bigfoots know someone's in the area, or they're letting people know that you shouldn't be here.
Yeah, get the hell out.
Yeah, I don't know which one.
Which we think they wanted us out. We were the only 2 people camping here on this entire lake. So eventually the knocks, got closer and closer. So we decided to go for a little night hike. So we headed down to the lake, and we're on the dock. And Adrian here did a nice little high-pitched whoop sound And immediately after he did that, we got a wood knock from right up there, right behind our camp.
Yeah.
So walking back in the dark back to our camp was a little exciting, and knowing that something is this close.
And it kind of started to pump us up. You can go somewhere, you can hear nothing. If there's something, a little piece of something, at least gives you. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah,
You know.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at around 11:30 midnight is when the major vocalization happened. It was so intense and so loud. I don't even know how to really describe it. I mean, it was just really high pitched and intense.
Let me start with the fact that that night we were. I'll admit I had a couple beers. I was, we were excitable, and I was telling the story, and I was being very vocal and loud and talking away.
We also were playing music.
Yes, the music going, the fire was crackling, so there was a lot of noise going on.
Yeah.
So most of the time in that moment, I'm going to be more full of myself, telling my story, and I'm not going to pay attention to anything. The sound that cracked out behind me was so strong that it shut my loud ass up, like instantly. And then we both stared at each other. And I think I lipped the word like fuck. You're gonna have to ad-lib that one. Bleep. And then I looked at you, and you looked at me, and you said, "Did you hear that?" At that point, I jump up, turn the music off, and it was so elongated because it wasn't like where you hear like this. What was that? It was like this elongated, like it kept going, and the whole time you're like sitting there, like, am I really like? Yeah. Going.
It was echoing everywhere. I mean, it just engulfed the entire area. It was
so loud.
And it was so close to us. And after that, we ended up getting a few more lighter vocalizations around the lake area, a few more wood knocks.
Yeah.
It was so intense that night that I actually went to bed with my boots on and the shotgun right on my chest because I was convinced we weren't going to make it out alive.
No, I went to sleep. I slept like a baby.
He slept like a baby.
And I had a weapon to the side of me, but I was excited, and anyway.
Yeah, and then later that night, we started hearing some loud thumps in the campground, which the next morning we found were large clumps of dirt with grass, as if something had just ripped it out of the ground and tossed it into the campsite.
That was a little different. I can't explain that one.
So it seemed like something wanted us out, but we managed to stay for the whole weekend out here, and the second night was pretty quiet. I don't think we heard too much. Maybe a couple knocks off in the distance, but nothing more than that.
Anything was so far away we could barely identify.
But I will play the audio now so you guys can hear what we heard that night.
Yeah, check it out.
So this is Little Twin Lakes right behind me. I'm standing out here on the boat launch. This is the boat launch that my buddy and I were standing on when he did his high pitch whoop call, and we got the wood knock from the direction of our camp. Another report that came from this area, a few summers ago, a fisherman was out here. He had the whole lake to himself. He was just out there paddling along the far shore side over there, and he was just fishing away, and he said he heard a couple wood knocks, and he just kind of ignored it, kept on fishing, and then a big splash happened right next to his boat, which kind of startled him, and he thought it was just, maybe a big fish jumping up there, but then he realized another splash hit nearby, and it was a rock. So he heard wood knocks and had rocks thrown at him in his boat out there on the lake. And that was one story. I think it happened about 3 years ago, early mid-June. There are so many reports that come out from around this area going back to the late 1960s. individual who was stationed with the Air Force at a radar facility just up the road from here. Was out here on his day off with a buddy fishing out there in the evening, and they described hearing multiple vocalizations, high-pitched screams. And that was back in the late 1960s, maybe early 70s. And there are so many stories like that that come from this lake. I've talked to a lot of locals, and they love coming out here and fishing for trout out of this lake. But when it comes to being here after dark, none of them will do it. They'll all leave. One guy I talked to, he was out here partying with a group of people, and all the women felt extremely terrified and uncomfortable being here after it got dark. So they eventually actually packed up and ended their little party out here, just because the women all felt so uncomfortable. So the locals around here say that this is one of the creepiest places to be when the sun goes down. So a fisherman who was camping here one time came down to do some night fishing. The sun was just about to really set, and the lake was already looking pretty dark. And what he described he saw was, he thought was a bear at first. He saw a big, large black mass like swimming across the lake to the other side. So he just assumed it was a bear until he saw a large arm come up. And he kept seeing that kind of movement, and he thought it was a person, because a bear will just dog paddle, not actually stroke like a person does. And he said he watched it swim all the way across until he lost sight of it. So he said it was dark, really dark in color, and very massive, but it had like a human arm stroke for the swimming. And he thought it was a little strange for a person to be swimming in this lake, especially at night, but because the lake is infested with leeches. So there's one report of a possible Bigfoot swimming across this lake. So 2 years ago, I got a message in late November. A couple hunters were up here during hunting season. They were camped on the far end of the lake in a second campground area, which is open year-round. The main campground closes in October, but the second one's open all year round for hunting season. Well, they were up here in their fifth wheel, and they were the only ones out here, and they spent about 3 weeks out here scouting around and doing their hunting. One night they were sitting by their fire, and they said they started hearing the loudest screams they have ever heard out here, and they've never even heard these screams ever before. And they said it sounded like a crazy woman just screaming away out here. So when they were hearing these screams, they kept saying it was moving around. It was going from left to right of the lake, back and forth, and they kept hearing it all night long. And it creeped them out a little bit, but they stayed around. They ended up going to bed. Next day, as they were scouting around the lake for deer, they found child-sized tracks running along the shoreline. And this is middle of November. It's freezing temperatures. We already had our major frost through the area, and they said it was about 30 degrees or so out here, and they thought it was a little odd that they would find child-sized tracks running along the shoreline and in the water, especially at that time, and they were the only ones out here. So it's interesting to think that maybe a juvenile was running around the lake and mama was just screaming away at it. That report came to me 2 years ago. After they heard the screams, they immediately started Googling, trying to find out what could have made that scream, and then they stumbled upon the screams that I captured here 4 years ago when my buddy and I were camping. and they said that it was exactly the same thing. So it's nice to know that other people have heard these screams as well out here at this lake. So I am back in an area of, well, it's an area that I've been coming to for years, and it's an area where we filmed our first documentary, Bigfoot Encounters of the Pacific Northwest. And I haven't been back up here for a while, and I am just blown away at how many home developments are coming into the area, which is just unreal. And this area was clear cut a few years ago, and this used to be all super dark, thick dark forest. And I'm worried that this area will not be active for very much longer. I mean, it's just developing way too fast, and the logging's just getting crazy up here. So pretty soon this area is just going to be not even worth coming to. It's sad. So here's my environment. Totally sucks. Logging's like crazy around here. Big old logging truck just passed me. Man, they are just stripping this area. I am so irritated.